right, let's get this thing started. We have a whole new set of questions. It is 7 o'clock. Hopefully, you all have had a wonderful, 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 wonderful week. I know I have. So, yay. And I had lots of requests this week. I got a request for talking about um, closing disclosure, credit and debits. I got a request for finance. I got a request for, oh, what do you call it? Valuation. So hello, Carolyn. I had, what do you call it? AI come up with some questions. I've not seen them. I'm just telling y'all, I have not seen them. I like going over these fresh and new like you all do because I want you to have an idea of what AI can actually produce. I'm not going to go and cherry pick for you because I want you to see what you would get if you do this too. So, without any further ado, let's get right into it. Oh, and let me set up so I can see everybody chatting. Hello, Miss Stacy, in my YouTube group. In my Zoom group, and everybody in the YouTube. Number one, let's start with some closing disclosure and credits. So I think AI, let me see. I think AI separated. Yes, we have closing disclosures, then we have valuation, and then we have finance. So let's see how AI treated us today. Doo-doo-doo. And guys, you can do this too. All I did was just go into Claude and put in a short prompt, and I said, hey, I need questions on these topics. And then if you have questions on those, you can always bring them to these sessions and ask. Okay, so closing disclosure, credits and debits. Number one, earnest money paid by the buyer at the time of offer and held in the brokerage escrow account appears on the closing disclosure as. So, earnest money paid by the buyer at the time of offer and held in the brokerage's trust account appears on the closing disclosure as. Well, remember, credits are when you are going to boop, receive money, yay. And debits are when you owe money. Now you owe and you paid this earnest money at the time of offer. Once you got under contract, it went to the escrow account. So does that make it a credit to the buyer at closing, a debit to the buyer, a credit to the seller, or a debit to the seller? What are we thinking? All right, Miss Crystal says one, it is C. All right. So we got earnest money. Crystal said C. Boop. All right. Anybody else with a guess? Well, our actual answer for number one is going to be a credit to the buyer. And I know that sounds confusing, but let's talk about it. We know if it's showing up on the closing disclosure, we're trying to make all the monies even as possible at that closing. All right, so, or you can call it a settlement, whichever. The buyer may have paid earnest monies, but those earnest monies are usually saying in the contract, hey, seller, if I don't buy your house and I breach the contract, here are the predetermined monies you would get. Specifically, they basically act like liquidated. I can spell liquidated. There we go. Let's just try that again. Liquid, there we go. Liquidated damages. Now, if you remember this word from contract stuff, liquidated means you're going to, in the contract, decide how much money the other side gets if if there's a breach, right? So they serve as liquidated damages. And since the buyer is buying, the seller doesn't get to get that money. It needs to be returned back to the buyer. So it would be a credit to the buyer. It would be a buyer credit only. It is not a seller debit because the seller doesn't have it. It's in the brokerage's escrow account. For these problems, we're saying, hey, where does every money, every dollar come from, and where is every dollar going to? All right, and Carolyn on YouTube said you keep getting them confused, the credit and the debit. Okay, that's why we're doing this. So think of it this way. When you return something to the store, don't you get a credit? Okay, that is the world's worst handwriting. Jesus, I need to pull myself together. So, okay, we'll do it this way. When you use your debit card, you're losing money. Money is going away from you. But when you use when you, let's say you buy something and then you return it, you get a store credit. And that is a good thing because you're getting money coming back to you. So that's one way you can try to remember that, right? Credits are good. Kind of like if you get, do something, they're like, oh, you get an extra credit. You do extra credit homework. Like it's a good thing. And it is opposite if you've ever done any type of accounting. It's kind of backwards from the accounting situation. But there you go. Remember, credits are good, debits, I'm not going to say bad, but you're losing money, which is why it would be our answer is a credit to the buyer. All right, let's try the next one because I want to make sure we all have these. Number two, the total contract sales price of the property appears on the closing disclosure as. So one of the questions I like to ask would be for the total contract sales price, where is the sales price money coming from? Who needs to bring the contract sales price? And where should that closing person give that money? Like, who's going to receive that money? Who is those monies going to? Who needs to bring the sales price and who should receive the sales price? Well, it's the sales price. So that means the buyer needs to pay the price to the seller. The buyer is paying the price to the seller. So if the buyer is paying, well, if the buyer's paying, that's a debit. If you're the person working this closing and there's a sales price, you'd be like, hey, buyer, you need to give me X amount. You need to give me this $350,000. And then you don't get to go home with $350,000. You had to say, hey, seller, I have this money. So the seller is receiving, which means the seller is being credited. So looking at these answers, the one that matches here, the buyer debit and the seller credit, that's going to be, it's not credit to the buyer and debit to the seller. No, debit to the buyer, okay, and credit to the seller. I like that. Credit to both, no. Debit to both, no. Our answer is B. All right. Mhm. I haven't even looked at these answers, but when I told AI to, mix up the answer choices, I said, your answer choices could be A, B, C, and D. I didn't say randomize, and I'm now wondering, now that we've had an A and a B, bless AI's heart. I swear to God, if they did A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, it just goes to show you AI is great, but it's not perfect. I don't know if it's that way yet. We'll check it out, but I get this feeling because when I don't tell it to give me even A, B, C, D numbers, it just, it either gives me all A's or all B's or only A and B's. And I didn't say randomize. So let's see. 3. A buyer assumes the seller's existing mortgage balance of $145,000. On the closing disclosure, this amount is shown as, well, we've got assuming a seller's existing mortgage balance. This changes everything. So I want to draw this out, what this scenario would look like. Let's say in 2010, you had this person, we're going to call this person A. They sell to person B. Now, person B needed money from the bank. Now that's 2010. Would you all agree that if there was a loan when it was bought in 2010, then B had to get money from the bank and then B gave that money to A? But that means when they bought the house, there was a buyer credit for the loan. In 2010 and 2010, when that buyer bought the house, they got money from the bank. They ended up giving that money to the seller. And because there was a loan, a buyer credit for that loan, now they're making monthly payments. All right. Well, it's now 2026. And this buyer has this loan and they're selling to this person. So this is B, and they're going to sell it to person C. Now, usually the seller would have to get money from a bank. But when we say they're assuming the seller's existing mortgage, there is no bank. Boo to the bank. What's going to happen is this money that the seller, the current seller B, this money that B borrowed, B needs to give that money to C so that now C has a reason to pay monthly. So let me just stop there. Does that make sense? I mean, I know my drawing is terrible, but I want to make sure the scenario makes sense. In 2026, C is not getting money from the bank. They're getting money from the buyer. The buyer's giving them the money they received when they bought the house in 2010. So it is kind of like a seller finance, except the financing is coming, the original financing is coming from the bank. But it is similar. In both cases, there's no outside, new bank coming in. Right? So let's say that this original loan was with Wells Fargo. When they give this loan, when in 2010, when this buyer bought the house, they made monthly payments to Wells Fargo. And C is now going to pay monthly to Wells Fargo as well. The same loan number, the same amount, like all of those things. Everything is the same. Oh, good, Carolyn. There's Caroline, who's in my Zoom room, and there's Carolyn that's in the YouTube. And I want to make sure we're good. And yay, that's awesome. So we know at the closing in 2026, the new seller has to give the new buyer, so messy. The new seller is giving the loan to the buyer to pay. So that means whatever that loan amount is, the seller is giving, that's a seller debit, and the buyer is receiving that amount. So if the seller is giving seller debit, well, then we know it could be this one, debit to seller. It can't be this one. It's not the seller is receiving any money. So we know it's debit to seller. Now, what happens to that money? It's going to be a credit to the buyer. So not a debit to the seller. Only our answer is C, credit to the buyer and debit to the seller. Cool. That was a good question. I like it. All right. But if you have questions, ask, because that tricks people up. And I know some of y'all have heard me say this before, especially if you're one of my California people. You may not have calculator math on the test, but something like number 3 could definitely pop up. And, we've got to make sure that we understand it. So it's math, but it's not calculator math. All right. Number 4. A property closes on June 30th in a state where real estate taxes are paid in arrears. The annual tax bill of $3,600 has not yet been paid. Using a 30-day year with the seller responsible for the day of closing, the proration on the closing disclosure is. All right, whenever I see proration, I know I'm going to draw my little line here, my timeline, January 1st, December 30th, because they did say it's a 360-day year. So I'm doing 30-day month, 360-day year, and it's smack dab in the middle of the year. June 30th is the closing, and the seller gets the day of closing. So we are taking that tax bill, and we know that change colors, the buyer is going to pay. The buyer is going to pay the entire tax bill either, right before 12/30 or maybe right after 12/30. But we're saying since it's paid in arrears, it's paid after you kind of use that time. Buyer's going to, or the new owner is going to pay the entire tax bill, which seems kind of unfair to me because this new owner didn't own the house from 1/1 to June 30th. If this is the original owner, this is the new owner. Why should the new owner pay the entire bill for this 2026 year? Absolutely not. I'm not just paying your bills. Caroline, you said you'd seen questions similar to this on the exam before. Yes, this is definitely something you would see on the exam. So we're trying to make things even Stevens. How do we do that? Well, buyer, you can't get out of paying the entire bill. But what you can do is get monies from the seller, get the money from this time period. The seller could give those monies to the buyer. And that's exactly half of the year. I mean, it's exactly half. I could either take that $3,600 and divide it by 2, or I could figure out a daily amount and then multiply by 180. Either way, but it's going to get me to the same right place. So I'm going to take this $3,600. That's 36,000. $3,600 divide by 2, which we know is going to be $1,800. This $1,800 needs to go to, that's the wrong 2, to the buyer. And it's coming from the seller. Right? So, well, it kind of makes weird sense. Don't mind my arrows, but the seller needs to give. So it would be a seller debit and a buyer credit for the same amount. So a credit to the buyer, an 1,800 debit to the seller. We got, looks like it's D, but we know it's not C. We know it's not 1790, and we know it's not a credit to the seller. So yes, it is D, and I was correct. Look at there. Claude said A, B, C, and D. Well, nobody ever accused AI of having an imagination, clearly. I don't know if it's going to go the whole way, but we'll see. All right, number 5. A seller prepaid the annual hazard insurance premium of $1,800 on January 1st. So this is prepaid. It's the opposite of arrears. And they paid it on January 1st, covering the full calendar year. The property closes on June 30th with the day of closing belonging to the seller. Using a 360-day year, the insurance proration is, this is the exact same setup. You had a year from 1/1 to 12/30, closing is 6/30, and that seller paid for the entire year in advance. They already paid this money. And if I'm the seller, I don't think that's fair. I only own this house from 1/1 to 6/30. Yet I paid for of the whole year. What's going to make things fair is if the buyer pays, if the buyer reimburses that seller. That means money needs to go from the buyer and it's going to go to the seller. Money is coming from the buyer. It's going to the seller. So let's find that one. Oh, but how much is it? Well, it's June 30th. It's $1,800, 360-day year. So once again, I can divide by two. 1,800 divided by two would be $900. So it's going to be a $900 buyer debit and a $900 seller credit. $900 buyer debit. Okay, that's the only one that says. Well, we know it's not no proration. We know it has to have something for the buyer. And we know it is not a credit to the buyer. So our only answer choice that it could possibly be would be A, which matches what we said, a $900 credit to the seller and a $900 debit to the buyer. So no, so hairline, hopefully that makes sense why the 1,800 is not all a credit because this closing took place June 30th. So the seller who paid for the entire year did get the first 6 months worth, but they paid in advance for the second half of the year and they don't need it. So hopefully that's making sense. But if it's still not making sense, Crystal, let me know. It's okay. This can get a little confusing. So, and that's why you asked to go over it. So if anybody, not just Crystal, if anybody has questions, ask. All right, number 6. A real estate commission of 6% on a $325,000 sales price appears on the closing disclosure as. Now, let me say the caveat. Remember, there has been a lawsuit in the last year or so. Traditionally, for like before that, last almost 100 years, the seller always paid the commission. Please remember, in real life, it could be either the seller or the buyer. But traditionally, it has been the seller. And that's what we're going to go with here. I think if this question were, tweaked what's going to be on your test, it would say, in the real estate contract, the seller has agreed to pay the commission. Or, the buyer has agreed to compensate the agent, their buyer's agent. But a real estate commission of 6% on a $325,000 sales price, well, that means we need to take our 325, multiply it by 6%, and that's going to give me, grab this calculator, 325 times 6%. I got 19.5. And traditionally, this would be money that's paid by the seller. So the seller has to lose that money. Is it going to the buyer's aid, to the buyer? No. It's going to the buyer's agent, but it's not going directly to the buyer. So we only need a paid by seller. So it's not a credit to the seller. The seller's not receiving 1950. I do like a debit to the seller of 1950, 19,500. I like that. It's not a debit to the buyer because going with traditional. It could be. Nowadays in 2026, the contract needs to say, excuse me, who's paying what, but going traditional and then D split equally as a debit between the buyer and seller. That would be cool, but that's not our answer either. It is a debit to the seller, 19,500. Nice. You said movies that may I've got your exam for Tuesday for North Carolina. What should you focus on until then? I would say if it's for North Carolina, I have a video on my page, a North Carolina review. That is the most missed section. If you were to watch my 5-hour video and you were to watch my North Carolina specific review, that's one of the best things you can do because, again, that North Carolina section is everything. All right, number 7. The loan origination fee charged to the buyer for obtaining the new mortgage appears on the closing disclosure as. So it's a loan origination fee charged to the buyer. I mean, first of all, if I'm the seller and you, the buyer, are getting a loan a new loan? That had nothing to do with me. That sounds like a you problem. As the seller, I should have nothing to do with this unless there were some paid closing costs, but I don't see anything like that. So this loan origination fee is a true buyer problem. So the seller ain't got nothing to do with it. Nope. Nope. We now know it's either A or C. It's a loan origination fee charged to the buyer. So that means the buyer has to pay money. So we know that is a debit. So that's going to be a debit to the buyer, answer C. All right, let's keep on going. Hey, I see you, Caroline Nolan. Oh, good. I'm so glad you like the videos, movies. And Carolyn, not Caroline, but Carolyn Rose 67. Let me know if this isn't making sense. Let me know if it's not making sense still. And what I would tell you is if you email, I don't know if you already have it, but I do have, oh, where is it? Vocab, question time, contract questions. Let me show you. Either you need to ask AI to make it for you, or you can get it from me. What am I looking for, guys? Oh, I'm looking for, and this is for everybody. You can take a screenshot if you want. Study guides. This would be under my lists. That's what I needed. You could go through and do this for yourself. I don't care. If you don't have the time to do it, you can buy it from me if you don't already have my study guide thing here. But I can scroll. Ha, this. There. If you want to take a screenshot and look at it. This is showing you, it's under my math formulas, and you can see it's a whole page, but it's going over things you might commonly see on these problems, like your purchase price would be a buyer debit and a seller credit, right? It's a buyer debit and it's a seller credit. The loan amount is only usually a buyer credit. You got your earnest money deposit. We talked about that, the buyer credit. So if you're struggling with these, check this out. Check this out, right? So there we go. Okay, this can help a lot. You can't take it in the test with you, but if you get confused, you can come check here to see if you're right, and/or you can bring the question to class. And by class, I mean this class. All right. Boop. Next question. These were good. I don't remember who said let's go over credits and debits, but this was good. And yes, the answer is C, Miss Carolyn. Yay. Number 8, a buyer obtains a new mortgage loan of $240,000 to purchase a $300,000 loan. The new loan proceeds are reflected on the closing disclosure as, we just talked about this. We know, that this is money for a new mortgage loan. The new mortgage loan has absolutely nothing to do with the buyer. With the seller. This is the buyer. The buyer needs money to give to the seller. So it's only going to be a debit to the buyer. Debit to the buyer. What am I saying? A credit to the buyer. Let me watch my mouth. So think of it this way. We know in general, I'm sick of green. Let's say the sales price was $300,000 like it says here. That sales price would be the buyer giving $300K and then the seller receiving $300K. Now, if the buyer has $300,000 in the bank, cool. But usually the buyer does not have $300,000 in the bank. That means there's going to have to be a loan. In this case, $240,000 is the loan. And that buyer needs. The buyer needs that money, so it's going to be a buyer credit for $240,000. The sales price is a buyer debit and a seller credit. The loan amount is only a buyer credit. And again, it's not the loan assumption we saw earlier. That's a different thing, just an everyday regular loan, right? So if it is the loan proceeds, it would be a credit to the buyer. All right. Next, a tenant paid the seller $1,500 in rent for the entire month of July. So if there's a tenant, the tenant paid in advance for all of July. The property closes on July 16th with the day of closing belonging to the buyer. Using a 30-day month, the rent proration appears as, we know that's just a split. So we know we have 7/1 to 7/30. And the rent was paid in full 7/1. That's the, I don't know, I made an at sign for that, but the rent was paid in full on 7/1. And that went to the seller. Then the seller sold the house on 7/16. So the seller owned the house from 7/1 to 7/15. And because the day of closing belongs to the buyer, from 7/16 to 7/30, the buyer owned the house. What would make things fair? The seller needs to give money to the buyer. It needs to be a seller debit and a buyer credit for the same amount. All right, so we're looking for seller debit. Let's start with that. This one says seller debit. Okay. This one does not say seller debit. This one says seller debit. This one says seller debit. Okay, we're only able to eliminate one of those answers. Okay. It's got to be a buyer credit. This one says buyer credit. C says buyer credit. And D says buyer credit. Row. Okay, now we got to do the math. So if rent is $1,500 for the month, we're going to divide that by 30 days. So 1,500 divided by 30 should give me, what is that, $50 a day? Yep. And this is 15 days because we've got, the July 7th, the 7th, July 1st through July 15th. Remember, it said the day of closing belongs to the buyer. So the buyer is owed the monies, that $50 for the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th, 21st. You get the whole point. That's 15 days, right? So we could, it's going to be 15 days either way, 15, 15. So we could really just kind of cut that in half, couldn't we? 1,500 divided by 2 is 750. So a 750, and we got credit to the buyer and a debit to the seller. It's not 800. It's not 700. It's 750. A is our final answer. All right. Hopefully it's starting to click. We like this. And number 10, which I think is, oh, no, we got 14 of these. Okay. Well, you know what? Let's go into, because it's 7:30, another topic, and then we'll come back and do at least one or two more before I end and see if it really stuck. And if need be, I can have AI come up with some more of those credit debit questions for, what is today? Sunday, yeah, today's Sunday. Wait, I just want to make sure. Boop-a-doop-a-doo. It is CE season for me, y'all, so my CE schedule is a little jankety. But no, okay, we'll be good on Wednesday. So if I need to do more of these debit credit questions on Wednesday, totally can. Let's jump to valuation. The principle of substitution states that A, value is maximized when properties conform to surrounding neighborhood standards. B, improvements should match the property's highest and best use. C, value tends toward the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute property, or D, value increases as supply decreases. All right. Anything that we can get rid of? Crystal, you said, oh, the credit and debit questions are very helpful. You'd like to do some more? Yeah, I will definitely. We'll have a couple more here. And then on Wednesday, I'll remember. Let me write it down because you know my brain. Say Wednesday, more credit, debit. Okay, got a note right here so I won't forget. All right, well, let's start with A. The value is maximized when properties conform to the surrounding neighborhood statutes. Well, great answer, but not to this question. That is a definition of conformity. Remember, we have all sorts of different value vocab words, right? These are going to be our principles of value. And the principle of substitution is not A. That's the principle of conformity. B, improvement should match the property's highest and best use. Well, that is the concept of highest and best use. It's not B. C, value tends toward the cost of acquiring an equally desirable substitute property. I like that one. Or D, value increases as supply demands. Well, that's supply and demand. You learned about that in high school or middle school. So by definition, or I should say definition, by just removing other answer choices, we know the answer has to be C, and C is correct. C is correct because the idea of substitution is, hey, people are not willing to pay more for something than they could if they bought a similar item at a lower price. And I say this example all the time in class. Let's say you go to Target and what you want is some toilet paper. So you got your Charmin Ultra Soft, right? And it's a pack of, I don't know, the regular would be the equivalent of 36 rolls, whether it's a double or a triple roll, whichever. And you got two of the same, packs of toilet paper. One's on sale for $17.99 and the other is not on sale. Exact same one. They just mismarked it and the other one is $25.99. Now, you know full well you taking the $17.99 one. Ain't nobody trying to pay more money for toilet paper than you have to. The idea is you don't want to have to pay more than you have to. And yes, I see you. The answer is C.
I like carrots, and you should too. It goes crunch, 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 and it's good for you.
We like carrots.
And you should too. It goes
crunch, crunch, crunch. Ah, we love it. Yes. Mm-hmm. All right, number 16. The cost approach to value is generally most useful for appraising what? The cost approach to value is generally most useful for appraising A, single-family homes in established residential neighborhoods, B, vacant residential lots, C, apartment buildings and other income-producing properties, or D, special purpose properties such as schools, churches, or fire stations. Ooh, do 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 do. All right, Miss Crystal, you said A, single family homes, established residential neighborhoods. I think that's what you're saying. All right. Stacy, you said D, special purpose properties such as schools, churches, or fire stations. So we have 1A, we got 1D. Anybody want to be our tiebreaker here? Is it A or is it D? Carolyn on my YouTube says it's D. And our answer, in fact, is D. What? Yes, we love it. Why? Well, we know that this apartment building and other income producing properties would be the income approach. It's not C. Vacant residential lots. The only way to find the value of vacant land is the sales comparison approach. otherwise known as the market data approach. And we know it's not A because single family homes with an established residential neighborhoods means that you're going to have comps. You have good comps that you can use, and that means once again you're going to use the sales comparison or market data approach. Good job, ladies. Mhm. All right. 17. An appraiser is using the cost approach. So we know the cost approach is going to be our special purpose properties such as schools, churches, fire stations, right? To value a property. The replacement cost of the improvements is 200,000. Accrued depreciation is 60,000 and the land is valued at 50,000. The indicated value of the property is, well, if the improvements are worth 200,000 and the land is worth 50,000, that means altogether it's worth $50,000. But there'd been some depreciation of 60,000. So I'm going to take that 250,000 and subtract out the 60,000, and that should give me a total of, what is that, 190? That is our new value, and that makes our answer A. That wasn't so bad, was it? But more importantly, does it make sense? But more importantly, does it make sense? Oh, yay, Crystal, I see that big fat. Yay. Okay, I got you. I got you. I got you. And Caroline, you meant 17. That's okay. Yay. Not too bad. All right. 18. I want purple. Pink. The 4 tests used to determine the highest and best use of a property are. The 4 tests used to determine the highest and best use of a property are. So hopefully you've got some ideas off the top of your head. But if you're looking at this question and you're going, I have no friggin' clue, that's how we study, right? We know if we don't know that we're okay, highest and best use, I can go to my slides, which are on here somewhere. There it is. And I could type in highest and best. Okay, let's see what we got. Highest and best use. Oh, it took me to the first thing I needed to know. The things I need to know is it is it pronounceable? That's the first thing. Is it financially feasible? Is it legally permissible? Is it physically possible? Is it maximally productive? So is it financially something that actually could happen? Is it legal? Is it actually going to produce the most amount of money? And is it physically possible? So, okay, if we know those, we can mosey on back to our actual question and see which one matches. Zoning compliant, demanded by the market, profitable and current. I don't like that one. Legally permissible, check. Physically possible, check. Financially feasible, okay. Maximally productive. I like that one. C, conforming, marketable, value, and current, no. Permitted, desired, affordable, not in today's economy. That makes our answer B, legally permissible, physically possible, financially feasible, and maximally productive. Guys, remember one of the best things you can... Tricks! You passed your state exam! What? Oh my gosh, Tricks! I love that! Oh, when we have somebody pass, if you've not seen it before, we celebrate, and that means, Tricks, you get a...
Good job, good job. Good job, good job. G-double-O-D-J-O-B. Good job, good job.
And my favorite, where is it? Oh no, please do not tell me it disappeared. Why do songs keep disappearing on my... I just played this song. Where's the money song? Where's my money song? No, I absolutely refuse to not play the money song. It's got to be here. It's got to be here. Drum roll Jeopardy, but Lady Gaga, I mean, I could give this to you.
I live for the applause, applause, applause. I live for the applause, applause, live for the applause, applause.
I can give you the applause song, but I cannot believe my money don't jiggle, jiggle. It rolls. Oh, here it is. I found it.
My money don't jiggle, jiggle, it falls. I like to see you wiggle, wiggle, for sure.
I love it. And Trix, I think you're the first person that you've gotten it. Let's play it one more time.
I live for the applause, applause, applause. I live for the applause, applause, live for the applause, applause, live.
We love that for you. Where's your money? You got it. Oh, well, let's play it one more time since it took me so many attempts to find it.
My money don't jiggle, jiggle, it falls. I like to see you wiggle, wiggle, for sure.
Love it. All right. Oh, yay. Another one passes the test. Boom, boom, boom. Another one passed the test. Hey. Okay. See, guys, this is why I do it. Y'all don't even know how happy it makes me. All that hard work. I love it. I love that. All right. Next one. We're going to keep on going, even though I can play songs. Finally, look, nobody ever asked you how many times it took you to pass this test. All they want to know is that you did pass and that you are now a licensed agent. Just like nobody, doctor, what is the person who scored, the last person to pass med school, at the bottom of the class? Their name is doctor too. Whatever. And I know you know this material, Trix, so you're going to make an amazing agent. All right. 19. In the sales comparison approach, when a comparable property has a feature that is superior to the subject property, the appraiser. So in the sales comparison approach, when a comparable property has a feature that is superior to the subject property, I like to teach this as CIA, CBS. If the comp is inferior, you add, and if the comp is better, you subtract. So if it's superior, we need to subtract. So if the comp is superior, so that means we are subtracting. So adds value to the subject property. Well, we know we never touch the subject property. Boo, we never touch our subject property. Man, all right. Adds value to the comparable property. No. Subtracts value from the comparable or comparable property. Yes. Makes no adjustment because adjustments only apply to inferior feature. No. Our answer is C. Woo woo. I love it. You did do it, Miss Trix. You took so many times, but you did it. And that is the exact hustle everybody needs to make it in real estate. If you give up in real estate easily, you're not that's not how it works. Because you may be, and I'm saying this to everybody, you may be ready to help somebody buy and sell. It doesn't mean the people are ready to buy and sell. It's patience. And you've got to make sure that you stand out and that you are top of mind when they think about, oh, I want to buy or sell a house. So there's so much that requires just going. So take that determination and apply it to your business. You're going to be great. All of you all that keep showing up, all of you all. All right, 20. A 25-year-old home has an outdated floor plan in which all bedrooms must be reached by passing through other bedrooms. The loss in value is best described as, what? You want me to go through somebody else's bedroom to get to my own? What happens if there's Zexy times? Like, what if you live with your siblings or your parents? Ew. No. Even with my bestie, I'm like, you don't need to be seeing what I'm doing over here. But let's take a look. Is it physical deterioration, external obsolescence, economic obsolescence, or functional obsolescence? Well, external and economic are the same. We can't have the same answer. So, okay, it's either A, physical deterioration, or D, functional obsolescence. We know our answer is D, functional obsolescence, because it's about the use of the space. And ain't nobody trying to go through somebody else's room in order to get to another room. That's just, nah, man, nah. Yes. Oh, Caroline, you are going to pass this exam. You are. I know you are. All right, 21. A duplex generates $24,000 in gross rent. Comparable sales indicate an annual gross income multiplier, GRM, of 8.5. What is the indicated market value of the duplex using the GRM method? Okay, so what I usually see, now this is where it gets weird. Gross rent multiplier could either be take the GRM and multiply it by monthly rent, or take the GRM and multiply it by annual rent. There's no one answer. Oh, thanks, Miss Tricks. Yay. So I'm going to do both and see which answer's there. I don't know, because I wish I could say it is one standard, but it's not, because they hate us. Yes, that's because they hate us. So if we do 8.5 times 24,000, or, well, actually that would be, boom, because that's annual. 8.5 times 24,000. Or if we take monthly rent, we would be taking 8.5 times 24 divided by 12, which is 2. Well, it's not this one. That would be what, 17? That's going to be a nil. Okay. All right. So if we take 8.5 and multiply by 24,000, that gives me 204,000. And it looks like our answer is A. Boom. But just to make sure, 8.5. Yeah, that would be 17,000, right? That can't be right. So in this particular problem, it is, we took it by the annual rent amount. I wish I had a better answer for how do I know which one it is? I don't. Every time I see these, I'm like, eeny, meeny, miny, I don't know. I just try them until I find one that matches. Okay, and they could not. They absolutely would not give you both answers on this. Like, absolutely not. No, that's not a thing. It'd either be one or the other. Okay, 22. The appraisal principle, ooh, we talked about principles first question, holding that an inferior property's value is enhanced by being located among better quality properties is called. So an inferior property's value is enhanced by being located among better quality properties. Is it conformity? No, we just learned what conformity was. Progression, regression, or contribution? Well, I know it's not contribution. Contribution is the idea that you can add value to properties as long as, you know, the value added is reflective of what you're adding it to. Like, it's has to do about adding value. So the question is it progression or is it regression? Well, the inferior's property is enhanced, so we know our answer is B, progression. Nice job. Nice job. All right, I think those were our valuation questions. Let's move on to finance. Woo, got some numbers there. All right, let's hit it. Okay. A borrower takes out a 30-year fixed rate mortgage of $250,000 at 6% interest. The first monthly payment is $1,498.88. How much of her first monthly payment is applied to the principal reduction? Okay. Well, it's a loan of $250 at 6% would give me a $15,000 annual interest. I think about what I was calculating for a second. What I'm trying to say is if you borrowed $250,000 for 365 days, you would, and you paid it all off, you would owe the 250 plus an additional 15,000. But we're asking about your first monthly payment. I'm not paying you $15,000 for one month. $15,000 is if I borrowed for 12 months. So I'm going to take this $15,000 and divide it by 12 because if this is annual, if I divide by 12, I'll get monthly. So 15,000 divided by 12. That's $1,250. That's your monthly interest that you would owe. And that number is here, but that's not our answer. It's asking how much of the first monthly payment is applied to principal reduction. Well, altogether, you wrote them a check for $1498.88. But of that, this is P&I. Of that, interest was $1,250. Oh, not 88, just $1,250 even. Pew. So if I subtract that out, I get $248.50. You might have written a check to your bank for almost $1,500, but you only reduced what you owe them by $248.50. You're welcome. That seems like a ripoff, but our answer is D. 24. A buyer is purchasing a home, a $400,000 home, with a 20% down payment. The lender charges 2 discount points plus a 1% loan origination fee. The total of points and origination fee paid by the buyer is, okay, well, it's a $400,000 home with a 20% down payment, which means they're borrowing 80%. So if I take 400,000 and I multiply it by 80%, that's going to give me a loan amount. So 400,000 times 80% is a loan of $320,000. Now, if you didn't understand what I did there, ask, right? But you could have found the down payment of 20% and subtracted that out, but we know the loan is for 80%, so it's just easier to do it that way for me. So I know that we got 2 discount points and we have a loan origination fee. Well, I know for discount points, 1 point is equal to 1% of the loan. So that means 2 points is going to be equal to 2% of the loan. And 3 points would be 3% of the loan. But we got 2 discount points that you need to pay, plus an additional 1% loan origination fee. So the 2 points plus the 1 point equals 3 points. So I'm going to take my 320,000 and multiply it by 3%. And that's going to give me $9,600, my answer of C. Boom, shakalaka laka boom. All right, let's stop with that one. That's 2 math problems. Let's stop there. We'll finish. Well, no, I'll go back to one more of these. We'll finish all the rest of these questions on Wednesday and do some more of these. Let's try 10. I said I was going to come back to credits and debits. I don't want to be a liar. Here we go. In a transaction where local custom holds that the seller pay for the owner's title insurance. There you go. Not life insurance. That'd be weird. The seller pays for the owner's title insurance policy. This expense appears on the closing disclosure as, well, the seller is paying, which means that's a seller debit. So it's a debit to the seller. Woo, woo. This makes our answer B. Yeah. All right. Oh, you're very welcome, Caroline. I will be back on Wednesday. Congratulations again to Miss Tricks. And anybody else, if you've got questions, anything like that, show up for these. You know, I do them twice a week on Sundays now at 7, on Wednesdays at 7. Bring your questions. We'll do some more credits and debits. And you know how to email me. If there's a topic you need me to go over some more, just email Candace Ellis at Gmail, and I'd be glad to answer it during class. All right, y'all, enjoy your lovely spring, late spring evenings, and I'll see you next time. Bye.